what up, Long Beach? Welcome back to another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk, covering everything local sports, brought to you by the Gazette newspapers and the Press Telegram, sponsored by Naples Rib Company, and featuring three guys who have got their captain's hat on because we're going to the ship this weekend. I am sports editor JJ Fiddler, to my right.
I'm Mike Cartabasio, co-sports editor and holding Vincent the sports baby, and to our right,
I'm Tyler Hendrickson. You don't have the answers, Sway. You don't have the answers. What's the name of your clothing line? Okay, now I wanted to mention, please follow us on Twitter. JJ, you're right. It's championship weekend. Saturday is going to be a big day. You can't possibly be at all the championship games, so get on Twitter at PT Gazette Sports and follow along with score updates. We are going to be keeping them fast and furious because you're going to want to know what the other teams are doing, because we've got three teams playing for 2 CIF championships and 1 state championship on Saturday.
That's right, Angels Stadium on Saturday night. St. John Bosco playing for all the Pac-5 marbles. We've got the Norwalk Lancers playing for their first championship in a very long time against a classically very good program in Lucerna. And then also on Saturday at Santiago Canyon College, where they won the CIF title, Los Alamitos Griffins back in action trying to win the state title for the SoCal region. So it's going to be a big weekend. It's going to be a big Saturday, and we're going to cover it big, like we always do. Stick around, another full episode of Long Beach Sports Talk coming at you.
Because we're going to go win this thing. We play Saturday night, 8 o'clock in the freaking Big A.
That's right, the frickin' Big A. Saturday, St. John Bosco, Mater Dei, a Trinity League rematch for the Pac-5 championship. How much have we talked about public school v. private school? You can just push that to the side for the week because it is all private school action. Obviously, St. John Bosco, highly touted from season's beginning. We put them and the Poly Jackrabbits on the cover of the Press Telegram. Football preview earlier this year, we were one game away from that happening, but the Poly Jackrabbits fell to the Mater Dei Monarchs at Veterans Memorial Stadium on Friday. So Mater Dei moves on to take on St. John Bosco. St. John Bosco with big hopes for this season coming in, talking state, talking natty. First things first, you got to take care of your rival in probably the biggest game of program history.
well, I think it's safe to say that, because if they win, it would be the first CIF championship for that football team in their history. And, I mean, how big is that? You don't see a team...
The biggest.
You don't see a team just come on the map in the Pac-5 like that very often. And to do it the way they've done it, they're a consensus top 5 team in the country at this point. They're number 1 in USA Today and Max Preps' computer rankings. They're not number 1 in their human poll, but, I mean, that's just unbelievable. And I got a little public service announcement for Bosco fans, because we've got a lot of friends who went to that school. And some of them sort of brushed me off when I said, oh, hey, good luck with the game. Hope it goes well for you guys. I'm like, oh, we already shut that team down. Well, I'm not even worried about the CIF championship.
Which they did.
I
was at that game, and it was a shutdown.
Without question. But aside from all the cliches about how hard it is to beat a good team twice or any of that stuff, it's hard to win your first anything. And especially against a coach that's been in that game so many times, including last year. Those kids have been in that game. They were there last year. These Bosco kids have never played for a championship. Yeah. And the coaches have never coached one at this level.
Well, Tyler, you were at that game at Alamany, and to Mike's point, they are a confident group, have been a confident group, and they might be at the height of their confidence right now.
No doubt.
And as they should be. I mean, they just rolled through a Pac-5 bracket with all running clocks. I mean, they are whomping everyone. They're more talented than everyone. They've been extremely well coached this year. And, you look at this team, it is hard to go undefeated in the Pac-5, no doubt. And it's hard to beat a team like Mater Dei twice. And Mater Dei has gotten a lot better since they played Bosco. They've gotten healthier, and they seem to be peaking right now. Does this game sort of feel like, now, and I don't want to draw too many parallels with this, but doesn't it sort of feel like when the Patriots were undefeated going into the Super Bowl, and they were just this great team that was setting all these kind of records, but the Giants were getting hot, and they'd been to a championship,
and they had the experience,
and they went on the road to win their playoff games.
Right.
And they snuck them.
Good analogy.
So you got to be focused. You can't overlook this team, because I think that's the only thing that's going to get Bosco, is if they overlook and they're not ready to play this game. They have not done that all year, really. They've been able to regroup when they've gotten a little bit caught. But if they go in focused, I think they are just too talented to where they shouldn't lose this game. But Mater Dei will make you pay if you come in and you're not ready to play a championship football game.
Well,
and we'll find out what they're like under the lights, because they haven't been on a stage like that.
And look what happened to Poly last week, kind of maybe taking Mater Dei a little too lightly. But
Yeah.
my point is this, because you're right. On paper, you certainly aren't really that worried about Bosco shutting out a team that they already shut out. All I'm saying is, and obviously fans don't play the game, the fans, I think, are overlooking it a little bit. So I'd say two things. Number one, you just can't take any Division I CIF championship in any sport for granted. And number two, if you win, celebrate it. Don't be like, oh, well, obviously we're going to win the CIF championship, but we're focused on state. I mean, this is the first one ever, and this is the granddaddy of them all. This is the biggest championship that the CIF contests. So enjoy it. I hope it's a great game, JJ. I'm a little bit jealous of you and Robert Morales getting to go to that one.
It's going to be,
it should be quite a scene.
It's going to be a scene there, obviously, always for the Pac-5 championship at the Big A. But I go back to that first matchup between these two teams. The biggest difference between that game and this game is Justin Allen. Running back for Mater Dei. He is their big play guy coming out of the backfield. He was out for that game against St. John Bosco. They did not have any big plays. That is not non-analogous. That's exactly why they weren't able to bust a big one against Bosco Braves, who turned the ball over twice early in that game and gave Mater Dei as many chances as they could possibly ask for to get on the board early, and they were unable to do that. So watch for Mater Dei trying to get Allen in space early on and trying to take a lead in this game, something they weren't able to do after the safety.
Right.
They had that lead for like a second.
Very brief.
A second. And then the defense for Bosco just took over. But yeah, like you said, it should be a great game. We're going to have full coverage during and after that game. And no matter what, it's going to be a bunch of kids celebrating on the baseball field out there in Anaheim. And that's always a fun thing to see. Saturday. Last but certainly, that boy is active.
He's having a good show today, JJ.
Also on Saturday night, a little bit earlier at 7 p.m. at Cal State Fullerton, the Norwalk Lancers looking for a championship. This is their first CIF title football game in 36 years, and they will be taking on Lucerna. A very interesting story, guys, because Lucerna has been in this game 2 years in a row. They've lost 2 years in a row, so they want to kind of avoid being that team.
The Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo Bills.
Go ahead,
the
you can
Berkeley
say
High.
Yellow Jackets, yeah.
So they've got this championship experience, and if for players that have been on this team, they really got to feel like this is the one that has to make it happen. But this Norwalk team is chock full of storylines as well. They're making program history. They're undefeated. They've been the top-ranked team in the Southeast for a long time, and they have got one very special running back who is looking like he's the best player at Norwalk.
I feel like every time we talk about the Norwalk Lancers, we talk about Rashad Penny, and I also feel like that should be the case.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Up and down.
Well, for example, we sent one of our reporters, Chris Trevino, out and did a story on their offensive line, and all the offensive line wanted to talk about was Rashad Penny. I mean, the people at the school, that's all they want to talk about is Rashad Penny. So it's fair. It isn't one of those situations like we normally see where when there's one guy who's getting a lot more attention than everyone else, everyone's a little bit like, well, what about me? Or like, oh, but I blocked for that guy. It's like, no, everyone understands this is a special kid who is leading a special team right now.
Well, Tyler, you wrote a story about Rashad Penny that you can find in today's Press Telegram and online as well. So go into a little bit about who you talked to for that story, because you could literally talk to the entire Norwalk community, and they might all have something different to say about Rashad.
He's just a really interesting guy. You know what I mean? A very unassuming, and he fits in as the figurehead sort of that Norwalk team so well because he's very family oriented. He's soft spoken. He's not a boisterous kind of kid. He admits that he's quiet, and it's just that's what that team's kind of about. And I think that he really exemplifies what that team is, and he's such a leader. Even without, yelling and being a rah-rah type of guy. He leads by example, and that's, his brothers were out there at practice when I was there to interview him. His two older brothers, Robert and Elijah, who ran for Norwalk and have continued their playing careers. They were just there to see their little brother and, embark in this run. His coach has nothing but great things to say about him, and on campus, everybody likes him.
And the stats don't lie either.
Not even close. And you want to say, look how balanced this Norwalk team is, and they're such a good team dynamic. But, I mean, he's literally scored 13 of their 14 postseason touchdowns. And he scored 49 touchdowns this season, which is the best in Southern California. No one in SoCal has scored more than him. And he's closing in on 100 career touchdowns. He scored 99 touchdowns at Norwalk. It's just bananas.
That is bananas.
It's absolutely bananas. And he gives credit to all of his teammates immediately. You know what I mean? A very humble guy that acknowledges what his team does for him. But when you put up those kind of numbers, you just have to say, this is a special kid playing at this school right now. And everybody couldn't be more happy for him, and it's just a great thing for that community that is not used to this type of success.
No, not used to that type of success in football, namely, and Lucerna coming in is used to that type of success. You mentioned the back-to-back trips to the CIF championship game in this division. Last year, they lost to Downey, but they're 11-2 out of the Del Rio League, so the one big difference is they've lost games this year, whereas Norwalk hasn't. Lucerna has 6 players with 4 or more rushing touchdowns. We just gave you how many rushing touchdowns Rashad Penny has, so not many tugs left for the rest of that team. They've also got 7 players who have over 100 yards receiving, and they've also got 7 different players with touchdown catches. Unreal.
Were you a little surprised the Del Rio League didn't get the SC job?
Oh, but
I thought he was going there. One thing that's important to note, I mean, you mentioned a ton of storylines on both sides of this. That's something, especially when you get to the championship, we always talk about is who's going to be part of someone else's storyline. Because that's always what it comes down to, is who can kind of assert things and go, no, this is the year that our school will talk about forever, and Lucerna will be the team that went 3 times and didn't win. Or is Norwalk going to be the team that gets rolled into Lucerna finally getting over the hump? Because no one's going to get the headline both teams aren't going to get the headline they want on Sunday mornings.
Yeah. Someone's story is going to prevail. And I think to kind of bring this, this is a lower division matchup, so to kind of bring it for the casual fans up to the Pac-5, each of these teams played and beat a Pac-5 playoff team. Norwalk hosted and beat Cabrillo in the season opener, and Lucerna beat Westlake actually earlier in the season in week 4, 38-35. So they both played Pac-5 teams, and they both won in close games. You'd say Westlake was a seeded team for most of the season, so that's a better win.
Quite a win.
That's quite a win for Lucerna. So both of these teams are able to, stretch and compete against some higher division opponents. We've seen that. So there is going to be a good quality of football out on the field.
It's Lancer v. Lancer as well.
And it's a lance-off.
There's at least 3.
It's a joust at Cal State Florida.
There's at least 3 Lancer v. Lancer matchups in the playoffs each season, and we are not denied that in football this year. The one thing to watch also for somebody who might just be wandering into this game, maybe a Norwalk community member who hasn't seen this team play. Norwalk does run that double wing classic run first, run second, run third, and then maybe pass the ball. Lucerna on defense is a pressure-based defense, so they want to get after you in the backfield, led by sophomore linebacker number 44 Daniel Campos. He's got 104 tackles on the season and 6 sacks. This Lancer defense has racked up 52 sacks this season. That's a lot. And they've also had 12 interceptions and 10 fumble recoveries. So they're going to want to get after you. That's not what you want to do if you're going up against a double wing offense. You don't want to get into that backfield. You don't want to be chasing people around. You want to contain, you want to gap control, and you want to force the other team to bounce things to the outside where you go after guys in the open field. Obviously, that's more difficult when the other team's got a guy like Rashad Penny, but that's what you want to do. So it'll be interesting to see if the Lancer defense, Lucerna that is, tries to adjust on their approach, because they don't want to get 52 sacks.
Right, they have to be flexible on that, and they were susceptible to the big play against Burbank, and Rashad Penny is Mr. Big Play, so they have to try to limit that. Can they switch to a more containment instead of an attacking defense? That's a good point, JJ.
What do you guys think about the fact that they play for plaques instead of trophies?
I like it.
I guess it's more space saving. You can they're a little more
They're
stackable.
cheaper.
They are cheaper, and it does save space, but I guess that's why every time I don't know, man, it's just a little bit different to me. Like when you go to like Poly and you look at their old trophy case and you see like what because the CIF championship trophy used to go to the school that won it.
Right.
Every year. And that trophy was a piece of hardware. You know what I mean? That was a trophy that you could imagine.
They're producing a lot of those plaques, man.
No, I know.
A lot of those plaques get handed out.
You're right. It just with all of the.
What do you guess a number? Guess a number. All the sports in the fall, all the different divisions, including state,
You're looking at
hundreds.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, and especially if you go into the other sections. But I just you look at all of the passion and the like excitement that goes into high school sports, and then you're like, oh, and then what you win is this thing that saves us some money in space.
Well, that's why you got
know.
rivalry trophies, man.
They give a plate at Wimbledon. That's thin.
Yeah, but it's a thing. It's not like, well, here's this same plaque. I don't know. They're very nice, but whenever I see a coach hoist the plaque, as opposed to the old photos of like a Ryan Landreth with this enormous trophy held over his head, it just doesn't have the same oomph to me.
Last but certainly not least, the Los Alamitos girls volleyball season just keeps on keeping on. They beat Mater Dei for the second time in 10 days. First 2 Saturdays ago for the CIF Southern Section Division 1 AA title. And again on Tuesday at Cerritos College for the SoCal Regional part of the state bracket. They then move on to the state title game. That's Saturday. That's back at Santiago Canyon College. They're taking on a very, very good Granite Bay team. These state finals for girls volleyball have been an enigma wrapped inside an upset, it seemed, for the last few years. We got our first taste of it when we went up to San Jose and saw Pauley lose to a Pali team. Yes, Pauley losing to Pali. And it was just like, we didn't really understand it. But then when you look at the scores since then and a little bit before then and some of those teams, it's like, oh, so that's just kind of what happens. Interestingly enough,
just put the 1AA champion up against the best team from the North and call it the state championship. The state bracket in volleyball is so irrelevant. I mean, it's almost always the SoCal Regional is a rematch of the 1AA championship.
almost every single time.
It was in 2010. It was this year. So you basically, to me, are just wasting 3 matches. I don't know.
It's nice to give a champion a chance at a state, though. You don't want to tell a CIF champion you're in a lower division, therefore you don't get a chance at state. That doesn't seem fair.
But they play different divisions. I mean, if you're a Division 4 champion, you can. I think the issue is bringing in like the San Diego section or whatever. Right, because the other division, but it's in this sport particularly, it's almost always the Southern Section top team playing whoever the top.
It wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered on Tuesday. Los Al was going to beat whoever showed up because they just swept Mater Dei, both on the scoreboard and on the floor.
The 1AA Southern Section champion has never been ranked lower than 25th in the country in the PrepVolleyball.com rankings. It's always going to be the team. So yeah, you're right. I mean, basically whoever you put them up against, you kind of expect them to roll because that's why they're in 1AA in the Southern Section.
They get competitive scrimmages out of it, but I think it's worth noting this is Los Al's last match. Like, this is it. We talked about the football games, and Bosco can have an eye towards state, and even Norwalk has a chance to get into a state bowl, actually. But this is it. For Chrissy Jones, Annie Hale, the rest of those seniors, this is it. I mean, this is your last match for Los Al. And so you can leave it all out there. You know, against Mater Dei, both those teams knew we're going to play them again. It was still for a chip, but they knew it wasn't it. But you can, I mean, this is it, man. Last time in front of that student section.
Well, and those girls, those seniors, like you just said, some of them were on the team, some of them were in the program, some of them weren't. But when they were sophomores, this Los Alamitos team rolled through that Division 1 AA bracket and then lost in the state title.
Yeah.
So that unfinished business storyline is there as well. Chrissy Jones said after the match that, you know, it's a refocus. You know, they kind of refocused between the 1AA bracket and the state bracket, but now they've got to do that again for one last time. And you're right. It is your last game, no matter what happens. So that just adds to the emotion. It's going to be another packed gym, though. That's going to be an awesome scene again at Santiago Canyon College. God, that Los Al student section, man. They don't care. They don't care if you guys think they're scrimmages. They're going to show up full throat.
How much do you think Granite Bay will bring? I mean, can that student section literally take up half the gym and then Los Al have
Granite Bay brought a lot of people to their state football game, so I'm assuming that like they brought them down in good buses, you know. So I'm assuming that community is about it's a well-to-do community, so they'll probably get a few buses to come down. I'm sure it probably won't be anything compared to how many people they got down here for the football game. But
actually, I don't know.
Be that as it may,
it's worth noting that this is their year.
They've
been building towards this year for a while.
Be that as it may, Los Alamitos, no matter how many Granite Bay fans show up, will be the loudest section in that gym.
And it's weird because they're probably like the underdog, right? When you look at the rankings, Granite Bay has been
rankings wise,
just on the rankings, but with the home being at home.
Even in terms of records and everything, I think Granite Bay's only lost one match this year.
Are we going to go back to the discussion as to who they play every week?
44-0.
They're 44-0 this year, with playing in some of the really big tournaments.
So we've got 3 championship matchups on Saturday. St. John Bosco football, Norwalk football, Los Alamitos volleyball, all of those live updates via our Twitter account, PT Gazette Sports. Put your follow where your mouth is. Get on our Twitter account so that you can be updated on Saturday night as your team plays for it all. I don't mind watching a game while already knowing the final score. That doesn't bother me.
A brownout is a localized power outage as opposed to a blackout, which is a grid power outage.
A media blackout would be I turned my phone off of all notifications. I won't look at any scores whatsoever. A brownout would be I'm not going to watch the scores as they happen, but I might know the final score before I watch it.
I do that a fair amount.
I don't care. It doesn't change the play. It doesn't change the result that I'm watching it. It changes my enjoyment of it in a different way, but like I will still watch the game.
Well, we mentioned early in the show that, to our surprise, the Jack Del Rio League, not the new USC head coach. That's because the Trojans chose to hire Steve Sarkisian, the University of Washington head man with whom Long Beach football fans should be well acquainted at this point, right? I mean, he's the guy who's recruited this area.
Yeah, 13 players on that UW team that he is now leaving in his wake are from Long Beach.
Sark, the city of angels sing.
Were you guys surprised by this? I personally wasn't that surprised.
No, I was more surprised that they didn't take Sark over Kiffin when Kiffin came in. I knew Sark and Kiffin were both on the short list, and I was surprised then. So I always knew through all of this stuff that Kiffin was going through, even when Ed Ogeron kind of turned that thing around there at the end of the season, the day Kiffin got fired was the day I was counting down to the day when Sark got hired. Amen, Vincent.
I was more surprised that people called it like a settle. And people weren't.
People are furious about it. USC fans hate it.
Surprising.
The poll that Lang did showed that I think like 15% of USC fans liked it, like 25% could live with it, and like 16% or 60% like strongly disagreed with the hire.
Are those fans not watching Pac-12 football that USC's not involved in?
See, that's I think that's the problem. Anytime you have a team that's really popular, you necessarily have a higher population of people who don't necessarily know the inner workings. Because a lot of people looked at it and go, and it's fair to say Steve Sarkisian never had as good a record in the Pac-12 as Coach O had this year with fewer scholarships. And it's fair to say, essentially, the high mark of both of their resumes is that they were assistants to Pete Carroll during the Golden Years. But looking at them, I mean, Sarkisian was the guy who recruited Southern California with Johnny Nansen for Pete Carroll, and he's continued to recruit Southern California better than Lane Kiffin or even Coach Orgeron. So I don't really understand people who don't, quote-unquote, get it. But I don't know. It is a little bit safe.
I think they just
I'd say it's a little bit safe.
Safe. My initial question to any SC fan who doesn't like this hire is, because John Gruden wasn't available, because Jack Del Rio's not coming through.
But USC
that's
fans are like Lakers
ridiculous.
fans. That's exactly
ridiculous.
what it is. It's
Can
like
we
they
also
wanted
say?
John Gruden.
Can we also say John Gruden at SC is like, oh my! I might buy an SC shirt with Chucky's face on it. Because think about that, though, dude. Southern California, all this talent, offensive-minded guy, coming in with that type of attitude, that swagger at SC, that would just be so much fun.
He's already been selling his program by doing Monday Night Football. But I think one point to make here is that, Sarkisian didn't necessarily excel to USC levels at Washington.
That's a big ask.
Exactly. But he took over a winless program, and he really turned it around. And him at USC, you got to expect that he is just going to recruit the doors off, right?
He did when he was there.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, Southern California All-American.
Yeah, so all three of us are agreed that this is a good hire, then.
I liked it immediately. I thought it was
now
a
let's go to the ripple effect of local recruiting that we're talking about here.
Well,
how does this directly affect local recruits right now?
Well, can I first add that you and I obviously, I think, are a little bit biased because we saw Sark in his first public appearance as the Washington head coach, speaking to the Southern California recruiting you just mentioned at the Poly Tesoro 2008 Pac-5 championship game at Angel Stadium, he was there in a brand new purple jacket and hat, because I think he'd been hired, I want to say, the day before.
Yeah, it was like 2 days before that.
So certainly one question to me is his first appearance as the SC coach going to be Bosco versus Mater Dei?
Makes sense.
It's where you'd probably want to start.
There are plenty of kids on both of those rosters who had SC on their short list before this hire. So if you're going to, quote, build a fence, you might as well start at the Big A.
Well, and he not meeting his commitments from
Also true.
Bosco? I mean, Shea Fields, Malik Thornton.
Let's also understand that
Dude
anything...
says he's down to UCLA or USC.
Anything close to a verbal commitment is also close to that kid never going and playing college football. at
That's
this
true.
point.
Signing day is still
Signing day is
away.
still a long way away.
The SATs have not all been completed
Exactly.
yet.
But it's funny. I think Wadude's a great case because I talked to him after the Tesoro game, actually, and he was looking at the local schools, but the one non-local school that he was interested in was Washington. So you got to think that he's probably going to be happy with this hire. So,
If
but
if you're a guy who runs a slot, or if you can play wide, or you want to get into the backfield, if you're an athlete in the Southern California
You're an
section right
athletic guy
now
on
who
offense.
wants to play in a wide open offense,
that or Oregon.
Ding,
I mean,
ding,
it makes a lot of
ding,
sense.
there it is.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think UCLA also hit a home run in answering back and saying, we don't have coaching concerns. You are going to have a stable coach here for the next 6 years. This guy owns Los Angeles. He just won. He's all fired up. He's got NFL experience. He's not going anywhere.
And this from the same guy who said and basically lost his job in the NFL for saying, I would leave anything to go coach Husky football.
But I don't think he could have anticipated what he'd build at UCLA.
So quickly.
It's such a special thing for him right there. I understand it. I did think it was a nice piece of gamesmanship that UCLA announced that contract during the press conference for Sarkisian.
I'm so surprised it was early. I thought it would be Mora and UCLA kind of going through that courting process again, trying to figure out if they can give him a number, both year and money-wise, that's going to make it, like you said, a message to everyone saying, we will not have coaching issues. But if you are being recruited right now to go to UCLA, Jim Mora will be your head coach for the entirety of your college career. I was just surprised that back and forth between the head coach's representation and the school's representation wasn't longer, which makes me think maybe something like that was in the works before this Sark decision came down.
UCLA needed to do it like that, though.
I don't think that USC-UCLA game this year could have been bigger, because obviously it's the game that's the reason Coach O is not at USC. I mean, I think if he wins that game, certainly Sarkisian is not announced this week as the head coach. I mean, I don't think there's any question of that, because there was a strong contingent, especially among the players, for keeping that guy. And as soon as he lost, suddenly it was like, well, now obviously they don't have to give him the job.
Well, let's be honest. If you're Steve Sarkisian, you had a conversation with someone, and I'm not going to guess a name or anything. You had a conversation with somebody from SC the day they forced Lane Kiffin off the team bus at LAX.
Hey, talk to me.
Get ready, bro, because you're coming home. I guarantee you he had that conversation.
But it's also, well, I mean, Pat Hayden did a good job, making it sound like it was a tough decision. He said, I hope Coach O goes and makes me look stupid. I mean, he said that. But the other side of that, people have talked about the UCLA, and I know this because my wife went to UCLA and her mom went to UCLA. You've never seen a UCLA alumni base as fired up about their football team as they are this week. You know what I mean? That win...
Since the days of Cade McNown.
To win 2 straight... To win in the Coliseum for the first time since '97,
since the days of Wayne Cook,
they're really feeling themselves, and so it doesn't surprise me that they acted so quickly, because I think they also want to get out in front of the USC news a little bit. Since there's a lot of undecided All-Americans in Southern California right now.
It's going to make a fascinating signing day. Yeah. We always kind of shook our head and scoffed at some of those kids who were like waiting until the day to decide, but they weren't really waiting. They had decided, but they liked the attention of other people not knowing, and like the fake out of grabbing different hats and stuff. That's for the birds. However, this year, I think it really is going to come down to that last week, with a lot of kids not knowing who they want and who makes the bigger push. And we'll see on that day. This is my bold prediction of the day. We'll see on that day, very early on, there'll be a couple names that trickle in for one school or the other. and it will have an effect on the names that are trickling in later that day.
Well, I mean, one thing that I just personally love, I don't know how close you guys have been following their basketball teams, but Enfield and Alford, I mean, the basketball coaches of those schools essentially hate each other. And
they're very similar dudes, too,
but
which is interesting.
they've been pretty public about hating each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, making fun of how many Final Fours they've been to. I mean, it's nice to me to feel like USC-UCLA is sort of back again as a major school rivalry. Because it's sort of been one of them's good or one of them's not as good. But now you got football and basketball, sparks kind of flying in both directions. A lot of fun. And I wouldn't be surprised if some trickery gets pulled on signing day that ends up hurting some feelings.
That's it. That's all. There ain't no more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk in the books. We have got to go start working on our previews, both for the championships this Saturday and the upcoming winter sports. Next week, I think we'll have a little bit more of local basketball and high school soccer to talk about because those seasons will be a week closer to happening, and we'll be giving you the wraps around the PT Sports section previews for those winter sports. First things first, Saturday, St. John Bosco, Norwalk, Los Alamitos, all playing for a plaque. We're going to be bringing you the live updates via Twitter. We're going to be giving you all the coverage on our website and in the newspapers. For everybody involved with those newspapers, the Press Telegram and the Gazette, for everybody involved in this show, and for all you sports fans out there in Long Beach, thank you. For Mike, for Vinny, for Tyler, for JJ, for everybody else.
Self-evidently JJ.
Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll see you in the stands this weekend. Take care.
Hold on. So you're telling me that if you knew that Auburn won the game against Alabama in regulation by 6, when that kid ran out of bounds and there was no time on the clock, you would have lost all of the enjoyment of, oh, they're going to review it? They're going to put a second back on? Oh, they're trying the field goal? Oh my God, because you knew exactly what was going to happen as soon as that kid ran out of bounds.
That's not a brownout. That's not a brownout, though. Brownout would be just saw the final score.
Bruh, if you saw the final and you saw it didn't go to overtime, you know. You know that they're going to have to score a touchdown somehow on this last play. They have to put time on the clock. They're trying a field goal. Oh, they're going to block.
Obviously, that's a different type of experience, but it's not a less enjoyable experience.
It is, dude. It is.
How can you make that decision? For sure it is. Well, you've never been anywhere close to an experience like that.
Because Tyler sounds like us like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, I used to feel that way. I just couldn't ever have the self-control with the Niners. But for me, at least, as I've gotten older, to the esteemed age of almost 30 here, I don't know, man. I love sports, but like I went totally nuts over the Auburn Alabama thing, even knowing what had happened. I mean, I couldn't get my computer open fast enough. I called 3 people. I don't know. It's just not the live experience to me. Partially because of what's happened with technology, doesn't mean as much to me as it did 5 years ago.
The live experience still means as much to me, but I take a different way of enjoying it when I already know what happened. I still enjoy it. It's just different.
So if I
it doesn't ruin it for me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't ruin it.
I hate to use this example. You look at I'm sorry, JJ. I don't mean this personally. It's just the first game that pops into my head. If you saw the benign final score of like Broncos 35, Chargers 24, that Monday Night Football game. Yeah. You saw the final score. You're like, okay, regular type game. But then the Broncos are down 24-0 at halftime.
Yes, knowing
and
that
then you're like, oh my God, the Broncos are just going to come back.
Stop. Knowing that they come back would not have changed if, let's say, I'm a neutral and I'm just watching that game and I'm not a fan of either team. Knowing that they were going to come back would not have affected my enjoyment of watching them come back.
I would say me.
Does that make sense?
What?
Me either.
Yeah. But I never would have experienced the pain and the disappointment of being down that much at halftime.
It's different if it's your team. It's different if it's your team.
What are we talking about? Why would you black out a team that's not your team?
I do that all the time. I'll record an NBA play. I'll record an NBA game during the winter schedule. Go cover a soccer game at 3 o'clock. Go cover a basketball game at 5 o'clock. Come home at 9 o'clock and just enjoy Thunder Heat. Yeah, and I may know the final score, but that doesn't affect how awesome that third quarter was for LeBron or whatever.
To be completely honest, to me, sometimes that heightens my appreciation of a game. Because if I go into a game knowing LeBron's about to get a triple-double, I'm paying attention in a different way.
Yes,
and I'm enjoying like, oh man, that play he made in the first quarter really sets this stuff up.
Yeah. But I'm only blacking out games for my teams.
Oh yeah, I do it for a lot of stuff.
Okay, but you understand why I would want to black out my own team's games?
Oh, obviously.
Okay.
Like Everton today. That would totally affect my enjoyment of it. But that's because that's my team.
It would take all the joy.
But if
you had known that the Derby
take all the joy for me.
all.
It just changes the way I'm
Would
watching.
have changed
the
a
game.
lot because if you knew the Derby ended up 3-3,
Yeah, no, that would have been no. I understand what
ruined
you're saying.
it.
But I'm
Ruined.
recording a lot more sports than you. I feel like is what we've stumbled upon here.
probably. But I would. Yeah, I'm only blacking
you're
out.
a maniac.
My,
You're a maniac.
I'm a bit of a maniac on DVR.
I'm with you. Nerd.